This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about Secret Invasion, Episode 2, Promises.
Tell me something I don't know about the Skrulls that fled.
They're here.
Who's here?
All of us.
Wait. You're telling me there's 1 million Skrulls walking amongst us right now? Have you lost your reptilian-ass mind?
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to Episode 2 of Secret Invasion Promises. This is Defenders Podcast, and this is TV Podcast Industries. I am one of your hosts, John.
I promise I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Ooh.
I promise nothing. I promise no one, and I am no one. But some people call me Chris.
I don't even know who I am.
It's what day is it?
New parent brain. Poor Chris doesn't even know what day it is and hardly even knows his name.
I swear it's new parent brain, and it's not that I have recently been replaced by a Skrull, and they just lost a few days in between. That's all.
Excellent.
Swear.
Excellent.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the second episode. We have titles.
Yes, we do.
Episode 2 is Promises. And episode 1, of course, which we didn't know at the time, was called Resurrection.
Yes, we held off recording. We did say in the last podcast that we got screeners for the first 2 episodes. We had seen the first 2 episodes at the same time as we recorded last week, but we held off recording. It's really interesting when you hold off from recording until after the episodes have come out, because you guys may have noticed we didn't really mention much about the opening credits. We just mentioned kind of interesting, felt a bit Cold War-y. The music sounded very Russian versus American kind of music, but it was grand overall. And then everything exploded after episode 1. Nothing was reported about how good the story was or how great it was to see Samuel L. Jackson. It was all, oh God, Maria Hill's dead. And oh my God, the company have used AI to generate some credits for a TV show. That was the only thing that was being discussed over the last week. It was interesting. I want to just quickly mention it since we obviously didn't mention in the first episode. We did like the credits overall. We understood the idea that they looked very weird and didn't look like standard artwork. It seemed like the headline that was out there that Disney used AI for these opening credits seemed to have been just run with by everybody that I saw on the internet, where it was like, why don't they just pay an agency to make opening credits for the show? They did pay an agency. They paid the exact same agency that multiple companies have used for making credits before. That agency put a number of artists on the opening credits for the show, and those creatives that were doing it chose to use AI to adjust the art, to enhance the art and augment the art, like has been done on tons of CGI projects before. So things like Across the Spider-Verse used a hell of a lot of AI artwork to complete the work. So I think it was an interesting choice. There's a massive backlash because there's a massive backlash to AI overall, but I think it was pretty overblown given how cool that first episode was. How about you guys?
So, I understand some of the rhetoric. Big bad AI is coming to take our job, and first and foremost, it is coming to take our creatives. In areas of the internet and places, that is very true. That is true. In this specific case, AI is used as a tool.
Yeah.
Photoshop, same type of thing. Photoshop itself has AI tools within it now to expand out, and people are using that to. So very fun. I saw someone do Abbey Road and expand out what is behind or outside of the frame of the Abbey Road Beatles album, for example. It's very fun. It is a tool. In some cases, it is badly used when someone goes and goes, oh, I like what that artist does. I'm going to steal their artwork. Absolutely. I'm going to make AI make my own version of it. That bad. When an agency pays a number of creatives and they choose to use AI as a tool to augment and change paintings and artwork and Samuel Jackson's face and things like that. That's just creative. That's literally, it's just a different form of paintbrush.
Yeah, exactly.
So the rhetoric that got, in my opinion, on this one was overblown.
Yeah.
Because it's AI is bad.
Yeah.
All forms of AI is bad. Problem is, AI has been around for ages. Different forms of machine learning have been around for ages. You probably don't even know it.
Exactly.
You're using AI and have been using it for a while.
Yeah.
But it's just how it's used, and in this case, it was used fine.
Yeah.
That is my opinion. And I did enjoy I enjoyed them a lot because I liked the morphing effect. And as I rewatched episode 2 for tonight's recording, I even looked at it with like, actually, is this bad? What was I wrong? Did I not enjoy this? Should I not have? No, still enjoyed it. Still thought it was cool. Everything was
Still
good.
fun. Yeah.
Yep, genres.
Well, not to give too much more to this, because I guess I personally just think it's probably just caught up in a whole rake of other things of people's, whether it's cost of living, war in Ukraine, whatever it might be that is making everyone panic and outrageously stressed. So I guess it's just another one of those things. It's possibly thin end of the wedge. I still like the credits. I think I was the one that commented on it. I like the vibe of them for sure. But I guess if you're in that industry where there's that threat, certainly when you've got studio executives talking, well, we're going to have all our programs written by it, if that's a thing, as a threat to striking people, I can see why it would cause controversy. I think it's the timing with the strikes and some of the kind of counter threats that have been used within the industry. So I can see why people would see it as a thin end of the wedge. If they're an artist and maybe not, well paid. So I guess, it's easy to say if you're not involved in that kind of creative industry. I guess it's a bit like the weavers before the Industrial Revolution. So, there's always been backlashes to
absolutely.
Increases in technology in work. And you're right. It's been there. I still like them. I wish they'd focused more on the show. And I think with that, let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion of episode 2. Yeah. Remember, fellow defenders, you are on TV Podcast Industries, where other than talking about AI, we also talk about great TV shows. So you can pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can find any good or evil or human or Skrull-like podcast player of your choice to listen to us. You can also leave a voicemail over there or send in emails to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com for feedback, which we have a lot of for episodes 1 and 2 of Secret Invasion, which we'll be coming to later.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, we also have our pub quiz for Secret Invasion. That's where you send your answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. We'll have our second question coming up later in the episode. And to catch up on any questions you missed, pop on over to the website at tvpodcastindustries.com. Click on the pub quiz section, and there's one in there for Secret Invasion now.
Yes, and we also have a name for it now. It is Burner's Tavern. But I have to say, where Rhodey and Nick Fury were, it did not particularly look like a tavern.
Yeah, it looked about as far away
like
from the
a
tavern
very
as possible.
plush gastropub, I guess.
Or a hotel bar.
Or a hotel bar.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, a tavern. We have Burner's Tavern now for our Secret Invasion pub quiz.
Excellent.
But, Derek, let's get on with it. What are some of the episode details?
Well, the executive producers of the show are Kevin Feige, Jonathan Schwartz, Louis D'Esposito, Brad Winderbaum, Samuel L. Jackson, Ali Selim, Kyle Bradstreet, and Brian Tucker. The head writer for the show, of course, is Kyle Bradstreet, and every episode of the show has been directed by Ali Selim. The teleplay for this episode was written by Brian Tucker, with the story by Brant, Englestein, and Brian Tucker. We spoke about Brian Tucker on episode 1, but Brant Englestein is an executive producer on the series. We discussed him previously when he wrote 3 episodes of Agent Carter, and was an executive producer on that show. Coming up also, another connection for TV Podcast Industries. He is a writer and producer on The Boys spin-off series Gen V, which is coming out later this year.
Excellent stuff.
So that's kind of cool.
That'd be good.
Brant
Has a TV
Englestein.
Podcast Industries pedigree.
Yes, we should give him some kind of award. particularly going from the previous spy show we covered, Agent Carter, and moving on to Secret Invasion as well.
Well,
That's
we
kind of cool.
only cover quality here on TV Podcast Industries. Yep. So, yes. Brant Englestein, you quality mint individual.
There you go. There you go. Good
and of course, Brian Tucker.
Absolutely. And everybody involved in the series, I think, so far.
Yes, including the boss.
Yes. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Secret Invasion Episode 2 Promises?
Sure. In 1997, 2 years after the Skrulls first arrived on Earth, Vara introduces Fury to a young Skrull named Gravik. Fury consoles him over the loss of his parents, and then gives a speech to the assembled Skrulls, promising that in return for their help saving Earth, he and Carol Danvers will find them a new home. In the present day, after escaping from the bombing attack on Reunification Square in Moscow, Fury learns from Talos that there are more than 1 million Skrulls secretly living on Earth amongst the humans. Angered at Talos' deception, Fury kicks that mother effing Skrull from the mother effing train. Gravik meets with members of the Skrull Council, a group of Skrulls who are in high political positions across the world. Some express their disapproval of his unsanctioned bombings, which may reveal their presence to the humans. Gravik reminds the Council of Fury's failure to deliver on his promise to find them a new home. And the Skrull posing as the UK Prime Minister proposes Gravik as the new Skrull General. Most of the council agree, but one member, Shirley Sagar, refuses to submit and support the coup. She is allowed to leave unharmed, and Gaia sees her leave. Shirley secretly contacts Talos, who asks her to set up a meeting in public between him and Gravik. Meanwhile, in London, Colonel James Rhodes is interrogated by the joint national leaders about the United States' role in the Moscow explosions, but Colonel Rhodes gives them nothing but sensitivity to their concerns. Following the hearing, Rhodes meets with Fury to explain the Skrull threat, but to Fury's dismay, Rhodes gives him a military discharge. He believes Fury is overstepping his remit and cannot manage a threat like this. Fury leaves angry at another betrayal. Back in Moscow, Russian agents interrogate the Skrull Brogan, who is posing as an American citizen, believing he is responsible for the attack. Sonia Falsworth arrives at the butcher shop where the prisoner is being tortured. She stops the Russians from beating the meat and proceeds to question Brogan. Using her persuasive methods, she learns that Gravik is building a machine for the purpose of strengthening the Skrulls, and a scientist couple named Dalton is involved. Gaia also secretly discovers that the scientists are experimenting on various alien samples, like Groot, the Frost Beast, Cull Obsidian, and the Extremis virus. Afterwards, she accompanies Gravik on a mission to rescue Brogan as Falworth escapes. Suspecting him of having talked, Gravik has Brogan executed by Pagon before they can reach their compound. Meanwhile, Fury returns to his home, where he is greeted by his wife after she is changed from her Skrull form back to human.
Loads going on in the second episode again.
Absolutely loads, including an old wedding ring.
Well, yes, and I'm sure we'll talk about it.
No, we're not. We're not talking. That's it. We're done. We're never talking about that scene at all. Just to really, because there's nothing to be said about that one scene.
Yes.
But let's start from the beginning.
Indeed. Let us get into our case notes for this episode. First off, case note number 1, a bombshell on the train.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. Yes, we have Talos and Nick Fury having a little game that Fury used to play with his mother when they used to go traveling around the USA. Mm-hmm. Yes, a game called Tell Me Something I Don't Know.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, Talos did, yes. Seemingly pretty much all the Skrulls, 1 million of them, that fled from Skrullos, apart from maybe a few that are happily somewhere with Emperor Drogus' colony, are on Earth.
Yeah, we don't know that. I think I just put it into our notes for later on. We don't really know who Emperor Drogue is. It was just casually mentioned by Talos here when he's talking to Fury. But the bigger point is Talos kept this from Fury. He's never told him about this.
Yeah.
They were working together, as we see in the flashback, obviously back in 1995, 1997. Fury has started to get some Skrulls working for him to save the planet from potential future threats. They've been working for him for 30 years. Fury blipped away for 5 years as well, but Talos has never taken the opportunity to tell Fury that 1 million Skrulls, everybody that survived pretty much, is now living on planet Earth, hidden in plain sight.
Yeah. I do wonder how many, like, basically when they all arrived. So I think it's kind of in my head, in my own head canon, it's the original group was with Talos back for the Captain Marvel 1995, 1997. And in these 30 years, 1 million have arrived. Like, not like point by point.
Yes.
Probably more in the last 20 years because previous 5, remember with the blip, plus now Saber is active as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think because of all this, at some point in the last 5 to 10 years, Saber has been built. They have the space station. So any ships coming down would have been caught. Dropping people off. So it's probably in the odd 20 years.
It feels like from the conversation that Talos is having with Fury here that he's saying when Fury disappeared for those 5 years, he thought he would never come back. 5 years is a very long time. And Fury made that promise to find a new home for the Skrulls. So it's like he's saying at that point, he threw out a beacon to anybody that could possibly be still alive. Any Skrulls that were still alive in the universe now come to Earth since we can't find another home. He feels, again, in his own way, that Nick Fury was never going to be able to resolve that deal, right?
Well, yeah, and Talos does say, his hope was that they can coexist with humans. So that is probably what happened. I mean, it wasn't all just 1 million sort of heading over to Earth. So, I mean...
But we saw the damage and destruction that was caused by the blip as well. When we saw that jump in the Avengers movie, we saw how they probably wouldn't be focused on the arrival of these aliens. Now, now, of course, the Skrulls are able to come cloaked in their ships, so it's not like they would see 1 million ships overhead. Just nobody would be investigating that since we had so much loss of the humans. Yeah,
I mean, I thought I really liked this scene. I like that kind of almost truth or dare type game being played here because even Fury says when he played it with his mum, he wouldn't tell the truth, or he would tell something sort of really
crazy.
Sort of crazy or just really not worth mentioning. And of course that was just what he said, the absence of what he said would tell his mum. So it seems like he didn't lick his sort of intelligence chops off the pavement, so to speak, that his mum could figure out, how Nick and his girlfriend were effectively by avoiding the question. So it was a nice little moment. I did think kind of the abrupt sort of leaving of Talos was, it just felt a little too abrupt. But I did kind of like that he was changing into, a Russian lady, all the time as well. I thought that was good.
That's cool.
And he certainly does seem to have that chameleon effect. I mean, I'm guessing that Talos hasn't really kept a single form before other than the Ben Mendelsohn, but he will go into other forms quite a bit,
Yeah.
And
well, that's part of the structure of this episode. What we're learning is that Nick was effectively employing all of the Skrulls to take on many various forms that were kind of his, what are they called in Game of Thrones? The birds that he's sending out to do, to find all the information out. So, Talos would have been someone that would have been quite central to that. He's the number one, for Nick in this project, basically.
Well, that's it.
I do wonder how many of these million now how many have replaced people versus how many are just there taking on different forms. So that is the question I do have. Is this replacement tech that we have seen in episode 1, i.e. taking the memories and storing people, how much of that is being used? Is it just on Gravik's little compound and his new Skrullos, just that faction who do it? Or are we talking like 1 million people have been replaced? Okay, you know what I mean?
That's
I'm
that's two extremes,
many.
but I think it's somewhere in between the two.
Exactly.
We saw in Captain Marvel that it's very easy for a Skrull to take the form of any human, but they don't get the memories. That's the machine that's been added. But that is a machine that we also saw in Captain Marvel, where they were trying to take her memories. So that is Skrull tech. It's standard Skrull tech that they're using.
Yes.
So potentially all of them had that as well. But we'll probably talk about this a little bit more when we get on to the Skrull Council, the Skrull Secret Council, because that was not created by Gravik. Gravik has only become a new member of that group. So, pretty likely that there's a lot more of the Skrulls, who are taking positions in various ways around the world and have taken on the memories and experiences of humans. But some may just be living with another face that they're using, and it's not technically replacing somebody else. But the fear, I suppose, of the show overall is that it could be your neighbor who has all the same memories as your neighbor of 20 years ago had, but they've only just arrived a week ago. So that's the whole fear of the show. Or
as you're putting, which is like, it's someone with my face living in Canada and is going, "Oi, crikey, I don't know why he's living in Canada and Australian."
Was that a Canadian accent? I was wondering whether you were messing your own accent up there, Chris, for a second.
No, it's just, I was going to go, "Oi, crikey, throw another shrimp on the barbie. It's cold outside."
I think that's Austria, isn't it, Chris?
I even went I went Russian there. See, we're mixing everything. It's a blending pot of accents. That's what my Skrull has out there.
It is.
Anyway.
Yeah. I will just say before we close out our case note number one, I do love the scene. I think yes. Mendelsohn and Samuel L. Jackson together are so good. We saw in that kind of flashback scene at the beginning which now, if you've never seen Captain Marvel before, you don't need to see Captain Marvel, because that was the entire movie condensed into about 5 minutes. But we saw their friendship develop throughout that movie. That's the whole thing. It gets brought in again by Fury that now he trusts Talos and Talos trusts him, as Talos says, he doesn't trust many people at all. And now you have the breakdown of that relationship. I love the question itself. Tell me something I don't know about this specific topic is a really interesting way of additionally probing someone. It's a cool little tool that he's got. And I think the reaction, I know, Talos being kicked off the train did seem like an overreaction, but I do think that moment where the camera settles on Fury afterwards, where he just puts his head in his hands and goes, "I thought the problem was there's about 10 Skrulls who have reacted badly against the rest of the Skrulls that I know are here. Oh God, there's a million of them on the planet that I wasn't even aware of." That's what that all looked like from that one moment where his head is in his hands on the train. So I liked it.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of Fury being disappointed with Talos, I can see that.
I think he's freaked out.
Yeah,
I don't think it's just disappointed. That's the thing.
But it was just, I felt they should have kind of talked it out.
It does lead into Hill's usually Fury is 3 steps ahead, 12 steps ahead, and this he's just not.
Yeah, it reinforces that.
It reinforces that, i.e. a million Skrulls are here, not in New Skrullios, and just on the planet, and Fury didn't know. Exactly. Now, again, it's Fury, so we've got to ask the question, did he know? And he's just... he's playing 4D chess. 8th dimensional, game of tell me something I didn't know.
We'll
find out more of that by the end.
Yeah, and we'll probably talk about that again in our usual case note number 5. Who do you trust?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else on case note number 1?
No, nothing from me. Shall we move on to our case note number 2?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the council. I wonder if they deal with property tax and stuff like that.
No, it's only UK councils that deal with that job. Okay. Although we do have the UK Prime Minister as a major member of this council. The levels that they have gotten to as Skrulls in the time they've been on the planet. Again, we don't know the full details. I'm sure that's the stuff that will be fleshed out as the season goes on. But I really like this reveal that there is this secret council who are in major positions of power. Not always the leader of government, but very high positions of power.
Leader of NATO, the UK Prime Minister, and then an American spokesperson, at least for the American government.
Republican Party, Conservative Party. I don't think they called it Republican, but they said Conservative. Basically their version of an MP for our British fans. So,
so I like
elected official.
Yeah, this was really interesting that they're in this in these high positions, because it's also like, to what extent, when we go to 97, where Nick Fury is, making this promise to the Skrulls in return for the work that he's going to give them, effectively to be his network of spies and infiltrators, is to what extent does he know that the head of NATO and the UK Prime Minister is a Skrull? What was that part of his plan, to not only have the infiltrators and spy network, but to infiltrate high levels of power? Or is this something that has just happened since? That's the interesting thing here. And certainly with the new knowledge, like we discussed in case note number 1, of a million Skrulls here. If he doesn't know that, then, in a sense, his little campfire has suddenly started to burn the whole hilltop.
Fire's down.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's kind of becomes out of his control when you see these people, on the Skrull Council and what the positions that they have in the real world. And, I mean, even it leads in to the Rhodes, interrogation effectively by the European Union and the UK and other leaders about the involvement of America in the bombing in Russia. So, they can suddenly, move to reinforce Gravik's plan here when, in this council, he effectively, it's a peaceful enough coup. I think it's just a chop to the throat of the NATO chief of NATO.
Yeah, who does turn and accept it pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, after being chopped in the throat by the old henchman.
But that's more of a shut up, listen to what I have to say, and then he accepts it.
But they all accept it. Yeah. He had the UK Prime Minister on board, I guess. It's probably a little nod to Boris and Eugene Lebedev in the House of Lords, something, well, or something like that. He already had sort of done his play. Yeah. And it's only, and I do love the name here, it's only Shirley, that says, if you're appointing a general and looking to go to war, you don't remember the history of the Skrulls. It wasn't that we went to war, it's that we were too eager to go to war with the Krees, and we lost. And what's the possibility of us losing here? And there is an element here with Gravik that, he, as he says, he views the human race as self-destructive anyway. So this is just speeding up a process that will happen anyway. It's an interesting kind of assemblage, but they move pretty quickly after Gravik has himself appointed as the general, Skrull general, to sort of coordinate then this attack as he lays out his plan to the council, with the exception of good old Shirley, who, it was interesting then that she was immediately on the phone to Talos.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's even to the point with Gaia, who was waiting outside, as Shirley left, there is a look between them, that a seemingly knowing look between them. And it's quite interesting, sort of just on a bigger level, to what extent Gravik trusts Gaia. It's kind of, it really does ramp everything up around that.
Yeah, look, and we'll get to a lot of that stuff in a second. Just on the council specifically, I have a question, which is the interesting one, which is, I can see S.H.I.E.L.D. and Fury. I can see Fury putting in people into government, but not into like an aide or a low-level councilwoman. Yeah. And starting there, and then he disappears for 5 years, right? And the remaining 3 to 4 since the blip. Now, on top of that, right? Yeah. So that's where I can see these people that he probably put in positions of infiltration have just grown. Yeah. Like, if you put someone in that, they will over time kind of naturally grow to positions of power. Because people move up in the ranks. And that's what probably we can see this is happening there.
Yeah.
Or I'd like to see that. The other option is one what everyone's thinking, which is these people have been replaced. They are all baddies, etc.
Yeah.
Or they've assumed an identity and that's it.
And it's the part
I'm interested
Talos,
to see.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's the part Talos has had. I mean, because she calls Talos immediately and he used to be on the council in terms of having a say, however this council operates. I presume it's not always by a coup,
Exactly.
in terms of who is appointed on there. So it's almost like you can see the longevity of this plan where, Talos was removed and that, Gravik's plan has been longer in the making.
Yeah, exactly. Like it is really interesting, and it's almost like they created this council to ensure stability, and now Gravik's using it to sow seeds of distrust in a way. Like he's using it to his ability to enact his plan. So,
and it is trying to harken back to Germany, like the National Party. So essentially, you had the German Democratic Party as a whole, then the Nationalist Party, and it was all democratic. It was all great. One guy came in and appointed himself the head of a party, and then the head of the general, the Führer, and that's how that. So that's like they're definitely echoing parts of that to show the problem with fear and how fear and distrust can cause additional problems.
Absolutely, and we don't even have to go back as far as Germany. That is Russia as well. That's Putin.
Yes,
right. So Putin has made himself dictator of Russia over the last 20 years. So unfortunately, we can't live in a sci-fi world where it's just a scroll and we can turn off the TV at the end of the story. It would be so much easier, wouldn't it? You mentioned there, John, earlier on about that look between Gaia and Shirley as she leaves. We talked a little bit about Gaia last week and about whether she's trustworthy. What is she doing? I think this episode, and this is my read on it anyway, I don't know whether you guys got this, but this episode I think is kind of underlying that she's some kind of double agent. It feels like maybe Talos sent her off, embedded her with Gravik, gave her a cover story that she's turned on her father. And now it's just because some of the looks that Emilia Clarke is given, some of the places that she's putting herself early on in the episode, it feels like she's getting there to gather information. Later in the episode, I think it's more, more underlined when she gets out of the car while Gravik is going in to try and save the kidnapped Skrull agent, and she makes that phone call in Russian. She's not doing anything other than making a phone call to report what's going on. So it does feel like she's working for somebody else anyway. Not sure who that is though.
I think as well, it's the looks from Gravik. Like when Brogan is killed for revealing, for loose tongue. Then, Gravik just looks over at her to see what her reaction is. Like there is that underlying suspicion there. And back at his headquarters at the former radioactive sort of processing plant and so on. Yeah. He has a dig at her father. There is a general sense. There is a general sense of suspicion from Gravik. And even with Gaia asking, did you know that Fury would be at the square? And he's like, no, but I hoped. Yeah. Or did he? Because like you say, she went to the art gallery to pick up the material, and that Skrull was killed, and that presumably should, given Gravik's network, he may have found out about that. Yeah,
I'd say just to kind of wrap that back up. So back in episode 1, we'd mentioned Gaia seemed to be the kind of welcoming party for new Skrulls coming to New Skrullos. Yeah, she seemed to be kind of happy-go-lucky. Come on in, join up. Some people become soldiers, some people don't. She gets her first mission, I think, in that episode. That's where she's sent to pick up the bombs. Because that art dealer is killed, it feels like Gravik's going, oh, hang on a second. Something odd about Gaia there. She's the only person that knows about that contact, and he's been killed by Fury and Talos, so maybe she's a double agent. So I think that's where that story arc is coming from. And then in this episode, we're seeing more of those moments with her where she's wants to put herself in the council room with Gravik, a place that she has no particular reason to be, right? She's not part of the council, whereas Gravik is, but she wanted to be in the room there to see who is in there potentially. And then she meets the eyes of Shirley, and there is that moment where either she's realizing for the first time that Shirley is a Skrull, or she has contact with her because of Talos.
Yeah. It's even the little hint with the safe house having been found out as well. After they've rescued Brogan from the butcher's shop,
right.
They go there. It's covered and swarming in police. So they
say they think it's Brogan and that's why he's killed, but actually it could have been that phone call that Gaia made. Yeah.
No, I agree with everything you guys say, and I think the problem, the hope I have, and I say problem again, everyone who's listened to this podcast before, no, I don't mean actual problem. I mean a stumbling block in my narrative head, which is I do hope we figure out Gaia's story sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I don't want that being the inevitable reveal on the 6th episode when we've known all along.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She's a double agent, triple agent, quadruple agent, some form of that. Like, she's playing multiple kind of stories.
Exactly.
So I just want I'd rather kind of cross that bridge maybe in episode 3, because we're at the halfway point next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then have more time with Mia Clarke and Gaia to kind of refresh her character out for the side of good that we know she's probably either going to end up in or has always been.
Right.
That's where I'm just hoping we get there sooner.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be in episode 3. Either that or she's working for the Kree is the final reveal at the end of the season.
Yeah. Or maybe Sonya Falsworth.
She may be.
No, don't even need to. She is 100% Skrull. Don't even need to. Just like, we know she's a Skrull now. Like, it's just, she's so evil and bad. She's just one of them.
Oh, well, let's definitely talk about Sonya.
Yes.
As we go through, we're talking about who do we trust at the end of the episode.
Yes.
Not everybody has to be a Skrull. There's some humans that we won't be trusting either. So, so we'll talk about that.
Yeah. But I think we've bled a bit into our case note number 3. So let's move on to it fully with Gravik's grand plan.
Yeah. So we get a bit more revealed here about what it is that Gravik's trying to achieve, or how he's going to achieve his goals. He's effectively looking to wipe out Earth. We kind of caught that last episode where they said that Skrulls could live on Earth even if there was a nuclear outbreak. So there's a little bit of that last episode. We find out that there was no dirty bombs used in Moscow. That was they were just standard bombs. That sounds terrible. 2,000 people and more died in the bombing, but they're not dirty bombs. They're not nuclear infused bombs. That was just used to draw out Fury, so that he could take a bit of revenge on him. But the other element of the plan that we learn here from the interrogation of Brogan, as well as the investigation from Gaia, is that they are gathering DNA to develop some kind of superpowered Skrulls. And really interestingly, we kind of mentioned it in the synopsis there, but really interestingly, some of it is from known characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like Groot, like Cull Obsidian, Frost Beast, and the Extremis virus that we saw in Iron Man 3. So that's really interesting that they choose these particular characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the notion of the harvest, like, is
well, I'll get to that in a second.
Harvesting. No, but like, is this harvesting the DNA? Is that what it's referring to?
So I'll talk about that now.
Else?
Yeah, that's fine. So the harvest question is that there's been a location given by Gravik to his second in command, Pagon. He's been given multiple locations for the harvest. I think the harvest is the battle at the end of Avengers Endgame. I think that's what Gravik is trying to locate to get more DNA samples to add to this Super Skrull. Any comic fans out there will know what that is. To add to this Super Skrull, they're trying to create other DNA from superpowered beings that they're trying to attach to these Skrulls to make them superpowered in case the Avengers arrive, right? Because that was what Gravik said. That he has a plan for defense against Avengers level
in
powered
the council,
people.
one of them asks, "What about the Avengers?"
Yeah.
And he says, "I've thought of that." So
Exactly.
this must form part of that thinking.
Yeah.
From Gravik.
What do you think of this, Chris? The way to bring in the Super Skrull into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's 100% what I think is going to be the way. I think what we're going to end up with is the machine that Gaia sees is literally kind of a circular machine. So what we're going to, like, there'll be a battle in it or something where people are in there and it gets turned on after Gravik has already got the powers.
Yeah.
He becomes the first one, and then maybe a number of his lieutenants. And we do see, because unfortunately, when they had the word Groot in it, and I've seen the trailers, we have seen Gravik use Groot powers.
Right.
Now, like in the trailers, we had already seen.
Yeah.
It is an unfortunate thing that marketing has already kind of revealed that he is a Super Skrull or will be a Super Skrull with like tendril, like stretchiness, like essentially like Groot had done with his, has with his appendages.
Well, we give a much cooler spin on it then. Instead of just that we've seen it happen in the future, we give a cooler spin on it. The Super Skrull in the comic books is created from the powers of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Groot has stretchy limbs. Cull Obsidian was the big monster creature, kind of like Ben Grimm the Thing, that got his hand cut off.
That is true.
In Avengers. The Extremis virus in Iron Man 3, that turned people into fire, kind of like the Human Torch.
Yeah.
Now, don't know exactly what the Frost Beast. I know what the Frost Beast was because it was the beast that arrived on Earth at the end of I think the post-credit scene in Thor: The Dark World. That was the Frost Beast, the one we thought was going to appear in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and ended up not being that.
Yes.
That was the Frost Beast. It just can run fast. It's a big beast from Loki's home planet, basically. But I guess that's the only one I can't fit to this theory of the Fantastic Four, because Invisible Woman is the one that has invisible powers, and the Frost Beast doesn't have invisible powers. But I do love that they've chosen those three as their choices for the DNA of this Super Skrull. It's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like that theory a lot.
It's cool,
it is a shame the Frost Beast doesn't fit it. As I say,
I remember they run fast, and I remember they're very powerful.
It could just be, Sue Storm. Frost is weather related as well. I don't know.
I like it, yeah.
Maybe.
They just didn't have we have yet to have a chameleon or like invisible kind of creature or person yet.
Or maybe just because it's icy, so it looks translucent.
There we go. That's it.
Ghost from Ant-Man has the power of invisibility, didn't she?
She did.
Not kinda. She more phased.
But that would at least fit the mark,
it
though,
fits
wouldn't
close.
it? For what they're trying to do, because obviously Fantastic Four have not been introduced in the MCU. They're coming sometime down the line. But when you have a show centered around Skrulls, you can't avoid the Super Skrull, right? So I thought that was a really cool way to see it. And yes, you're right, Chris. We have seen the stretchy powers in the trailer. Not sure if that's exactly Gravik, but it is someone with his face. There you go.
Yeah, no, and I can't wait. Honestly, it's so silly. I love these kind of Cold War-y, spy shows, but it is based in a comic book reality. So I do want to see the human Nick Fury or the Skrulls take on a Super Skrull, because a Super Skrull is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe like some of that, not Groot DNA, but someone else's DNA gets mixed in with Fury, or Gaia gets, I don't know, Captain America's DNA, or something like that, so that you end up getting souped up powers on new people.
Or like in the Secret Invasion comic books, we get the Secret Warriors, including Quake, coming back from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to defend against the Super Skrull. How cool would that be?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be a good way of introing them.
Yeah, and it is, I mean...
I'm setting the bar high here.
Yeah, well, but I mean, in general,
anyway,
the possibilities of cameos is endless here in terms of if they bring Super Skrull, because I'm not entirely sure a handgun will sort of cut the mustard on them. So there's a lot of possibilities for cameos coming in. So I really... It is kind of salivating, isn't it? It's kind of like drool city over what could potentially happen.
Of course, I will set the bar high and then set the bar a bit lower to where it probably will be. Talos and Gaia and another character will be on the side of Fury, all Skrull characters, so they could take on the DNA themselves, like Chris said, to battle a Super Skrull. So it's Super Skrull versus Super Skrull, of course. Yeah, that's absolutely the other option, which is probably more likely than quite coming back. But I can always hope, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Always hope. I think the other thing about this plan is just the sheer kind of simplicity of that. In the end, it is quite personal for Gravik. From what we see in 97, you know, that whole scene right at the start where you have Nick Fury, you know, work to keep my home safe and me and Carol Danvers will find you a new home. You know, it's the betrayal. It's this feeling of betrayal, which, you know, casts Gravik in, you know, as just an antagonist here in that, you know, they have been working, for 30 years, infiltrating, effectively being, as you say, a personal spy network, not even a shield network to Nick Fury. And he seemingly is not delivering on his central promise, which is a new home for them. I mean, the only thing
that he had like 22 or 23 years before the blip to sort that out as well. And it's not just Nick, because I am the Nick Fury fan here. I will defend him. It's not just Nick. Captain Marvel's supposed to be doing this
exactly.
as well.
And she's much more able to do it because she can speed around like she does. But I mean, so yeah, you know, it seemingly becomes or feels to Gravik more deliberate that actually it was an empty promise.
Yeah.
Which I really like in terms of that foundation for the motivation for doing it. So I just think that's really good. I think, you know, and because it just becomes about Nick Fury.
Exactly. And that kind of comes to the conversation that we have between James Rhodes and Nick Fury as well, where Nick Fury is making it about himself, but trying to bring a bit of help in from Rhodey. But he's effectively saying, I'm not calling any of the Avengers, not calling anybody else. This has to be me that takes this down. There's a very personal connection between him and the Skrulls. He knows he let them down. He absolutely knows that he didn't keep up his promise. He probably didn't think it would end off in a worldwide infestation of 1 million people that can take over anybody's skin. You know, he probably didn't think it was going to be that bad, but he did absolutely let them down and use them for his own means. So he wants to be the one to solve it. Man, the scene between Rhodey and Fury is fantastic, though.
Yeah.
Tough to watch, though.
Yeah. Two great actors on top form again.
Yeah. It was tough to watch, and I don't mean in an acting sense or any of that. In that they talk about how they have had to prop each other up, or how they feel the need to, based on the color of the skin and who they are, to act and behave certain ways. And you're like, oh wow, like, and it's a cool piece. Like you've got Nick Fury and Colonel Rhodes, like a war machine, like part of the Avengers, and two of these characters talking like this, acting like this. So tough to watch, very cool scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was pointed out by Samuel L. Jackson that the two of them haven't really shared screen time together, talking to each other as characters in the MCU. And it was something that he really wanted to do in the show, was have a moment between these two characters, at some point, because it's always been, you know, they're talking to each other about Tony Stark, or they're talking to each other about the Avengers. So he wanted to have this moment in here where they talk to each other about their place in the MCU itself. It's a brilliant line as well from Rhodey, where he's saying to him, about the fact that yes, they are connected, but the reason they wrestle power from mediocre men who didn't look like us is not simply to hand it over to other mediocre men who do look like us. It's a great kind of pushback against Fury's central premise that we should be friends because we look similar, effectively. Yeah. So that was great.
Yeah, no, it was really good, this scene. I mean, I even just like that, you know, it also then now adds this additional dynamic with him being fired, where Nick Fury is that, you know, spy out out in the cold
exactly.
from the authorities.
Yeah.
It's that other dimension to, classic spy tales.
Absolutely.
Which has been layered into this, which I thought was really good.
Yeah.
I think, as well, we also hear that Rhodes is fully aware of the Skrulls.
That's an interesting one, yeah. Because he says he was in a briefing 15 years ago about the potential possibility that this might maybe happen, and Nick's going, it is happening, and there's a million of them out there. I love the kind of callbacks to things like, is this Hydra? He's going, no, this is way more important than Hydra, or much worse than Hydra, those kind of call outs I thought were really interesting. So, it's a good moment with him. I love the kind of kiss off from Fury at the end, where he effectively breaks the security guy's arm, when his travel plans have been arranged by Rhodey. But the couple of lines he says at the end of the conversation were quite interesting. He says to him, do you think I'm going to give up my DNA? So whether he suspects or not that Rhodey could be a Skrull and could be handing him over to be replaced by a Skrull, I wonder if that's what he meant by, I'm not going to give up my DNA.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. And then his final line of, I'm Nick Fury, even when I'm out, I thought was just classic.
Yeah, that was nice.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Kind of defiance.
Absolutely.
Really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I did actually, when they raised Hydra, given S.H.I.E.L.D. Hydra dynamic, I was surprised that, I'm sure Fury did have infiltrators in Hydra that were Skrull, but that, even with that, Hydra were able to keep a lot of their initial actions, from him. Yeah, to some extent.
Maybe he did. That's the interesting part of this, because the group that's with Fury in 97 seems to be the only group he knows about, and it's expanded to 1 million since he's been gone. Yeah. Again, that's my read on it. I don't know whether it's absolutely true, but that's a reasonably small group of Skrulls. It's only 20 or 30 people in that room, isn't it? When he's making that speech about them helping him and he'll find a new homeworld. He didn't seem to be authorizing that more Skrulls can come now. Come on, everybody join the
No, that's true.
The Skrull army.
But you would think, along with NATO and major powers trying to get into the Hydra structures would also be quite high.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
I'm guessing. But anyway, nonetheless, it was just interesting that even if he did, they were able to, they are S.H.I.E.L.D's equal. They're able to, sort of possibly either identify them or, know about it as well.
Maybe.
Yeah. The whole, you're not getting my DNA did lead me to one scene that I hope we do get later, which is Samuel Jackson v. Samuel Jackson v. Samuel Jackson v. Samuel Jackson, which is just going to be some it's basically like Fury talking to Fury talking to Fury, in just some random way. Well, all of them look like Fury, and it's just going to be fantastic.
It'd be a nice way to replace what they did in the comic books often, where he's talking to LMDs of himself, life model decoys of himself. So a nice way to do that.
Be a nice nod.
Yeah.
I do want to move to something which is above Butcher's pay grade, which is probably the best line from Sonya.
Yeah.
Sonya the Torturer.
Yeah.
Because she just comes into the Butcher's. Who are you? That's above your pay grade, and just walks by. I want that level of sass in my life.
Yeah,
to be able just to, it's like, I know you, I don't care who you think I am more important than you, and I am walking around.
Absolutely. And certainly followed up with, didn't your mother tell you could lose an eye beating your meat? The torture of Brogan is it's just fists. It really is kind of gaining nothing for the interrogators here.
Yeah, it's definitely a Sonya quote fest, because you all miss my favorite one. When she comes in, the first thing the Butcher says to her is, that door was locked. And she goes, well, I guess that tells you about me and doors, doesn't it?
It's true. I Olivia Colman is a national treasure in the UK.
International treasure now, Chris.
International treasure now.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I just think this character of Sonya, if she is continued to be written the way she is going to be fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
They're definitely.
Just throughout the MCU, you can pop her in as just, her going to meet the power broker.
Mm-hmm.
Her facing off against Deadpool. Just sassy versus sassy versus sassy. Like, it would just be fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. It's like, what's the other thing she says to Brogan? Are you a smart one? And he says, I won't talk. And she goes, no, I didn't think so. But there will be an imperative to talk when your blood cooks at 160 degrees. Yeah. And it's just like, she just injects him in the arse as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, she's totally ruthless here. I mean, that's why, it's kind of it's almost a bit like Pennywise. It's the clown element of the snappy one-liners and the disarming charm and femininity. But behind it is this horror show of ruthlessness, that doors don't matter to her, that, she is prepared to just cut off a finger. No real threats. It's just, right, let's find this out. Cuts it off to see it change. So she definitely knows that she can use then her injections to effectively boil his blood up.
And know that he's a Skrull. It's confirmed immediately. Right, that's out of the way. All I needed to do is take a finger, effectively,
Ruthless efficiency.
Also love that she walks in and goes, where's the escape route? Because she knows she only has a limited amount of time here and she will need an escape route from this room. And friends did like that. Thought that was quite cool as well.
So, I mean, it was interesting when Gravik actually came in to rescue him. I mean, that was a great scene as well, with just how he, certainly, I think you replayed it a number of times, just the opening shot as the guy is about to bring the cleaver down to cut some meat. And he fires at that moment of when the cleaver would make the sound on the block. Yeah. I love the little touches of him, holding the bell on the door. And that was really good.
But we had a guy attached on a hook to the roof to kill him. We had another guy with his throat slit, another guy with a knife up into his gullet to kill him as well. So a pretty brutal, violent scene, but really stylishly filmed. Like
absolutely.
It felt like a very short version of a John Wick moment, almost. These guys know exactly what they're doing, very professional, and know exactly how to get to their target.
Absolutely. But the question I had lingering in my mind after it is that, he walks in, he sees the chair toppled over, but the grate up. And, I know with the safe house incident, was that the precursor to him, being shot? But I think it goes further back because, did you talk? He must have realized, okay, someone was in here with you and they've escaped. I wondered whether they were going to chase after Sonya, whether there was going to be chasing, but, I think just he's very cool. I mean, right at the start as well, in 1997 when Vara says, we could use him, he's very determined and, they talk about his escape where both his parents have died, but he's managed to pilot a ship to Earth.
From behind enemy lines.
So, he is as well a cool cucumber.
Absolutely. Do you think Brogan, the Skrull that was at the bombing and was captured by the Russians, do you think he would have lived if they hadn't seen the safe house overrun? Do you think they suspected that he talked and he was going to die anyway? They were just taking him away from the safe house so that they couldn't see him? Or do you think they were actually going to bring him back to the safe house? What do you think?
It's a difficult one to say. I kind of feel he would... I think it probably was that because the whole safe house, if they were bringing him back to the safe house to kill, but then as well, you kill him, he changes back to a Skrull, so they have to do it out of sight. They couldn't have just killed him there and left him because then it's like, oh, it's a Skrull. So I think there was always that intention. And it's even just the look then that, I think it all kind of builds and connects in with the look that he makes to Gaia in the car to see what her reaction is as well. So like, he's like constantly probing and testing but doing things unexpectedly, I think, is Gravik. In terms of to get the best kind of outcomes, really. And it might even be that he knows that Gaia is a double agent, but at the moment she's useful. I think he's that clever that even where it's not his own personal asset. He will use her as an asset in order to draw Fury in at the bombing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And these little things are just confirming things about people, in the sense of him letting Shirley go and walk out of the council unharmed.
Mm-hmm.
Was that because he knew she was a Talos sympathizer and would more likely immediately tell Talos?
Yeah.
And so he's, building up this picture from these actions, for Gaia or for other people that Talos may have put into his camp.
And interestingly, that's what Talos wants. He wants a face-to-face meeting with Gravik about his daughter, about Gaia. That's what he specifically said.
Yeah.
So that's also a little interesting touch there.
So then let us trot on to case note number 4. Yes.
Yeah, tiny case note
Yes,
here, really.
absolutely.
Nothing really happened. Only 30 seconds, really, of the scene.
It wasn't important at all.
But we definitely want to talk about it. Fury arrives home. After doing a very James Bond thing of picking up his car from a garage that it's been stored in, drives out to his house in the country. Don't really know what country it is, but anyway, arrives home. There is a Skrull inside, cooking dinner, who transforms into a human and tells Nick Fury to put back on his wedding ring before giving him a kiss. So Nick Fury is married to a Skrull. Now, I think I'm right here. This Skrull is the same Skrull that we saw at the beginning of the episode that introduced Gravik to Nick Fury originally. So that means it's someone that is very much on Nick's side and has been beside Nick all the way from the beginning, is my read on that. Yeah,
it's hard to tell with the Skrulls.
I just recognized her by her voice. That like the actress that plays her is Charlene Woodard, who we've seen in a load of things before. She was in Pose for 2 seasons, John. So you definitely recognize that voice. It's a very iconic voice that she has. She also played Samuel L. Jackson's wife in Glass and in Unbreakable. So they've worked together before as well. So I kind of recognized her voice as Vara at the beginning, the Skrull that introduced Gravik. So I think I'm right. So I don't think Nick Fury doesn't know his wife's a Skrull. I don't think it's that.
No, I didn't take that either.
No, I didn't think that.
The way I took this to be is that, no, he is a Skrull sympathizer to the point where he doesn't care. Like, he's married to Skrull, but they've kept it a secret. Like, this is very much undercover because of who he is, what he does, and the fact that she's a Skrull.
Yeah.
The question I do have is whether the rest of the Skrull think she's alive, or like she like so undercover that she's no longer that, or is this just a known and it's just like Talos is going to turn up now and next, and it's going to be, where's your husband? Where's Fury? Kind of like it's a known with the Skrulls, but not with humans.
I think it'd be a real shock if Talos didn't know that Fury was married to her. That would be a real surprise. It seems like they're best mates, like.
And that's what we're going to find out.
Yeah.
I think, because also, wasn't he just up in space for the last 3-4 years?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's probably not the best thing when your wife is down on Earth.
Yeah.
So there's more to it. There's definitely more. But the shock value in one of the biggest kind of bachelors of the MCU outside of Tony Stark being married.
Yeah.
They're hooking them all up, man. They're hooking them all up.
Do you know, interestingly, he has mentioned his wife once before. Back in Winter Soldier, when he breaks into Steve Rogers' apartment. Do you remember that scene?
I do.
Where he's sitting, waiting and playing the music. He says, "My wife threw me out." And Steve goes, "I didn't even know you were married." But what he actually means at the time, in that scene, in that movie, I'm absolutely sure they wrote it for him to mean that S.H.I.E.L.D. had shut down on him, because he writes down ears everywhere. So he's talking in code with Steve. He's not really talking about a wife, but technically they may have retconned it that he was talking about his wife, that he was married. He would have been married to her at the time. They'd known each other since 1997. So potentially it's a retcon of that line, but it definitely meant at the time he was talking about S.H.I.E.L.D. kicking him out. So
yeah, well, it was 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's cool. It's going to be fun to see where they go with this.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I kind of liked it. I liked the kind of surprise of it. And so, yeah, let's see where it goes.
I did think it was interesting that she changed from a Skrull into her human form before Nick walks in the door, or as Nick walks in the door. She doesn't stay in her Skrull form. Do you know what I mean? So I guess I feel like some people that would think that she is a Skrull impersonating his wife.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, and maybe that's what was the intention of the scene, to make people think that she was. But I don't think she is.
Or they're both Skrulls, because this isn't really Nick Fury.
Well, let's talk about that. We're on to case note number 5. Who do you trust from the episode? We can run through this pretty quickly, I think, overall. A bit quicker than we did first episode because, there's 2 less characters than there were in the first episode.
I do like how in our notes, those 2 characters are now struck out. How harsh, but nonetheless.
If we lose characters every episode, I will strike any more characters out who die in episodes. Yes. So, who do we trust in this episode? Will we put Nick up there at number 1? Do we trust Nick Fury at the moment?
Define trust.
Can you trust Nick Fury ever? Is a question. He is our main character, he's our main protagonist. Do we still think there's a potential that he's masking his abilities to play down that he's just old Nick Fury?
Yes.
Do we still think he's doing that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the reveal of a wife and the amount that he's hiding, yes, 100%.
Okay.
That's what I do believe.
But we don't think he's a Skrull still, because that would be weird for the main character of the story.
No, and if he is, it's a Skrull that Nick Fury trusts.
Right.
And he's somewhere else.
Yeah.
So by
It's Sauron.
extension, you can trust him. You know, in that sense.
Oh my God, you talked about LMDs earlier. This Skrulls now are just. His Skrulls are just his version of LMDs now.
They could be.
There's just an army of Nick Furies, and they're all just basically Skrulls doing his bidding. The Furies army.
Okay.
The Howling Commandos.
There you go. Okay, we're not gonna continue down on just Fury, but this episode, the big person that's been that we thought we could trust last episode, we can't trust. Talos was keeping quite a big secret. In this episode, 1 million Skrulls have been called down and are in places on Earth. It feels to me, anyway, that he knows all about the high-level placements of Skrulls across the world. And yes, he may have been doing it to maintain stability, to help inform decisions. But those Skrulls in high positions are now at the control of Gravik. So, yeah, can we trust Talos anymore?
That is true. And it could be, for sure, Talos is Dodge. It could be Talos and Gravik, you know, that personal meeting. It could be because they're actually working together.
Maybe.
And maybe Gaia is the one that doesn't agree with her dad's methods.
Maybe.
In what's happening. So.
And she did make that call in Russian to, while she was outside the butcher's, so that wasn't a direct call to Talos. Presume they'd be speaking in Skrull or speaking in English if they were talking to each other. So,
like it has the potential to flip, I guess, is what I'm saying. Ultimately,
I think they're going to lead you to believe that we can't trust him.
That's the fun.
Based on this, that's the point. They're going to make us believe, and then he's always been on Fury, so it's going to be that moment.
At the moment, it's a flag against Talos.
I mean,
he's certainly withheld information directly from Nick Fury, so there's a flag there. Whether you can still trust him, I would say yes, but with the flag.
Can I add the awkward one here with Maria Hill? I feel like they've done their best here to underline that Maria Hill is dead.
Yes.
By having the body brought back and the negotiation from Rhodes to make sure the Russians delivered her body back. I think that's all pretty much confirming it is Maria Hill in the box that's being brought back, having her mother crying over the return of her dead daughter who died because of the things Fury did. I think that's pretty much saying that Maria Hill is actually dead. So I think we could trust Maria Hill.
Yes, we can trust her, but I still think there's at least a 30% chance that one of the reveals later is that she's not dead.
Okay. Yep.
I still think she's just too big. And I say that when they've killed off other major characters in the MCU. Yeah. But I just think she, just for what I feel it's good to keep her alive from a story narrative.
So Iron Man isn't big enough anymore for you. Chris.
No, not
Is that
anymore.
what you're saying?
Well, we still think he's going to come back in one of the Kang dynasties.
Okay.
But anyway, let's not talk about that. No, I think it's a good shock.
Yeah.
Like, no, she's not actually dead. It was all a fake so that she could work in the shadows.
I think they could do that, but I'd be happier if they didn't. And not because I don't like Colby Smulders or the character. You know, I think the character had a good role in the moments with Fury, but I think it is an interesting character to have killed off in that first episode to show to show what the show's willing to do, I suppose.
I mean, it's also one of those things, isn't it? It is the balance, because, like, I love discussing the potentials, the possibles, the twists and turns. But if it becomes too elaborate, the whole preconception of it is just too obvious.
Yeah.
You know, then when it actually is revealed, and it won't help any reveal, because you're like going, oh, okay, so, and then this is why, you know, I like to think that Fury is 3 steps ahead still.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Gravik could be 8 steps ahead. And do you know what I mean? Because I think Gravik shares the same qualities.
Yeah, well, he was trained by Fury.
Exactly. But also just naturally in terms of that opening where they say about how resourceful he was and so on. So, like, it's more that he's being undone by someone. You know, it's almost a Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty type thing in terms of dynamic, because they are steps ahead of one another, but they're constantly changing. It's so shifting, and that's why I hope, in some ways, the reveals happen much more continuously through the episodes rather than something right at the end, which then will feel preconceived. Do you know what I mean?
I agree.
Way too preconceived.
It's like,
to make sense.
You reveal something, then I reveal something, then you reveal something else. And then, exactly, yeah.
And I think possibly Maria Hill could be that if there are other big ones, because, you know, there is the possibility of Maria Hill, but we've now just been introduced to, Nick Fury's wife, who was a Skrull. There is, you know, the question marks with Gaia and Talos as well. So it's, you know, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I have a very quick question for our Fury kind of nerd on the call. His lore, I should say. Okay. Fury has a son in the MCU. Sorry, Fury in the comic books has a son who is African American, who looks like Samuel L. Jackson, based on kind of the Ultimate Universe one.
Yeah.
I'm right about that, right?
You are correct. Absolutely. Correct. Yes.
So, the fact that in the MCU now, Fury has a wife, and if it is the same character in Skrull that introduced Gravik to Fury.
Yeah.
What we could be getting into here is Fury's son is essentially Gravik. He was trained by Fury, brought up by Fury, lived with Fury because Gravik lived with this other female Skrull, who then in turn married Fury. So basically, essentially what we'll end up getting is a father-son battle. It's like, you trained me, I loved you, you left us. You left me, you left my mother. Exactly. Well, yeah, that kind of, that, like, you left us, like, you... And that's a play on the comic books.
No, I am your stepfather.
Well, yeah. Daddy issues are all over the MCU. There is that joke about these characters, right? So that is there. That was in She-Hulk, right? So yeah, entirely possible. The bonding moment between Gravik and Fury was over the fact that he has no parents. His parents died in the war. That bonding moment where Gravik wouldn't even nudge heads against Nick, which is the traditional greeting, until Nick had commiserated with him about the loss of parents. So potentially, Farah and Nick might have adopted him, and they could have lived with the two of them as he just arrived to Earth. Yeah. Okay. Right. Quickly back to who do you trust? 2 final people that we have to mention on here. James Rhodes. Is James Rhodes a Skrull? He mentioned the meeting 15 years ago where he knew about Skrulls, but he's never mentioned anybody else, right? He's never mentioned their possible existence to anybody else. And that throwaway line from Nick of, I'm not going to give up my DNA as he walks out of the room, is that a nod from Nick that he knows Rhodey is a Skrull?
Yes, I believe he is a Skrull.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's a Skrull as well.
And then the Armor Wars piece is the TV show that is coming out later in the kind of future of the MCU is Rhodes, who comes back and is trying to pick up the pieces of his life after being gone and being replaced for X amount of time. And his armor is out there along with all of Tony's secrets.
Right.
And he has to kind of pick up the pieces. That's what I think is the story and plan based on that he has been replaced.
Interesting. And I'm actually more convinced that Rhodey is not a Skrull from this episode, weirdly.
Okay.
Just because I think it might be a good double bluff. The fact that he tried to take away Nick Fury's power, tried to fire him. And then if he wasn't a Skrull and he was actually doing it as James Rhodes, I think that's even more of a dig at Fury, where he's gotten to. But anyway, interesting one to keep an eye on if we see James back in the future. Final one then, of course, is Sonya herself, Sonya Falsworth herself. No. Is Sonya a Skrull? For me, I think this episode confirms she's absolutely not. She's just very, very good at her job.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely not, and certainly trust her. Again, it's just to that line from Talos on the train where it says, I hoped that they could coexist with humans. And that's the thing, it's the spectrum of, there may be some Skrulls that want to be in that coexistence with humans. I mean, to the point where they'll marry them. So, it could just be that she's a happy Skrull.
She might be, except that she cut the finger off another Skrull to check and see if it was a Skrull. I think
that's true.
She may have had.
That is true.
Yeah,
because
she may have had another way to
they
tell.
are able to tell.
Although Gravik did say it's a bit more difficult when somebody's been in the Forum, but they've only been in the Forum for a little while. So
Rogan hasn't been in the Forum for a long time because we only saw it in episode 1. So okay, scrub that. And as I say, mine gets carried away because I kind of think anything's possible still.
Absolutely. But hopefully some of the possibilities will be ticked off the board as we go on throughout the series. I think that's it for our Who Do You Trust, our fun little final case note.
Yes, absolutely. Any notes or quotes from you?
No, I think I covered most of mine throughout what we've talked about.
Yeah, same. I think I mentioned most of the quotes and most of the notes I had throughout the discussion here. But I did want to mention that there is a couple of callbacks to previous MCU stuff in here. We do get a mention of are the Avengers coming from the Skrulls? They do have that reference there. We have a reference in the beginning and the previously on to the return of Agent Coulson as a Skrull. So I thought that was quite a good call out. So Coulson is mentioned. I know it's just from a clip from Captain Marvel, but he is mentioned in the show. So I wanted to call that out. There also is the mention of Hydra in the conversation with Rhodey, and they mention Alexander Pierce as the mediocre man who doesn't look like them. Alexander Pierce, if you remember, was the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. back in Winter Soldier. So lots of little nods back to the previous MCU shows and movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I had mentioned it previously, just the Emperor Drogue's colony. It would be good to know what the colony is. Is it a spaceship type colony? Yeah. Is it a remnant of Skrullos?
Or is Emperor Drogue the Emperor of the Kree and he's holding some Skrulls in a colony or in a prison or something like that, maybe.
It's a penal colony or something. Because I guess...
It's just casually dropped by Talos.
And it would be useful to know because if it's like a colony on another planet that is equally, I guess there's a choice. So, Gravik's plan is maybe not just to find the new home, but it is, and certainly given that he's been made a general, maybe it's kind of, like Alexander the Great type of general where he has aspirations for colonization of the Skrulls. Yeah. Or, that type of thing, or Genghis Khan type
Interesting
thing.
One, yeah. Time will tell. 4 more episodes to go.
Definitely. But let us get on to our defense then. Chris, do you defend Secret Invasion Episode 2 Promises?
Yes, I do. some amazing scenes, very much on par with episode 1. Even on a rewatch for me, still very much enjoying where the show is going. Hoping we get more reveals, more kind of pacing in episode 3, and kind of it sets us on our path, and it's a rocket to the finish. And more just because I'm enjoying where we are, and I'm enjoying the show, and I'm enjoying the universe that we haven't got much info on, which is both the Fury spy element outside of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, which had a significantly smaller budget and was a different type of show. So we haven't had this spy noir thriller, and the Skrull universe, which we haven't got outside of very much either the cosmic side, which is the Guardians of the Galaxy, or the Captain Marvel, which wasn't really, it was more an origin story versus a Skrull story. So enjoying where we are. Very much so. Want to see more of it.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Chris. Derek, do you defend episode 2?
Of course I do. I absolutely love it. Opposite to Chris, I'm hoping this takes its time and pace so we can spend as much time as possible with Nick Fury. To be honest, I'm hoping that it gets to episode 6 and it goes, come back next week for episode 7. This is a 52 episode show which will last all year, and season 2 has been confirmed as another 52 episode show. No, that's a bit too much, but absolutely loved it. Yeah, really, really enjoying it. The performances in here are great. Great to see James Rhodes and Nick Fury have that moment on screen. I thought they were really good, and that moment on the train with Talos and Nick, introducing another great new phrase for Nick Fury. Tell me something I don't know about this topic. What a great interrogation method from Fury. And speaking of interrogation, Sonya's interrogation of the Skrull was fantastic. And yes, Gravik's breakout in the butcher shop is very cool. Another John Wick style scene. I thought it was cool. Yeah, excellent. So yes, highest of recommends. This is my favorite show, and highest of defends for me.
Excellent stuff.
But one tiny thing didn't mention that just sparked at me, Chris. You mentioned about a lower budget on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I love the nod to the lower budget job that Rhodey has, where he says, my other suit's made of titanium, so this one's actually I considered a big saving for the US government, like that. Anyway, sorry, how about you, John? Do you defend episode 2 of Secret Invasion Promises?
Yes, I certainly do defend episode 2. I'd give it 4.5 green blushing brides out of 5.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
I really enjoyed this. I slightly more than the first episode, because I like the pace of this much better. I think it is ratcheting up, and it needed to. But I think it's part of the overall plan. So I liked it. I thought it came in really nicely from the first episode. I really like that personal dimension that was framed there in 97, with, Nick Fury and his promises, and that sort of forming the basis of Gravik's plan. We've got potential for, more than potential, Super Skrulls on their way, in some form or another. I really thought, the Colonel Rhodes with Nick Fury, just a great scene, in a very posh tavern, was really good. Along with Sonya Falsworth's interrogation. I really love this character. It's one of those characters where you just go, I really hope this character of Sonya Falsworth makes it to the movies as well as in TV. I could just really see her being a stalwart of this side of the MCU in general. Right. So I'm really fingers crossed for that. I love all the intrigue. I think again it just opened it up, whether it's Gravik's plan, Gaia, Talos, all these different relationships changing, and it's one of those things where I'm still not entirely settled on some of these, on where they're going and how they're going. But I'm really, really enjoying it. And of course, with the big bombshell of Nick Fury and his, green wife, really good. Intergalaxy marriage. It can only, annoy the far right. So what's not to like about it? And I think, it was just really good from top to tail. So, 4.5 green blushing brides out of 5.
Very good. Very good. All my notes are coming out as we go through the wrap up. You notice Soren was the first member to join Nick's army as well, Talos' wife.
Yep, that's going to come back to us. That's going to play a part in Gaia's pushback and all that. That's going to play.
Yeah.
It'll play into it.
Yeah, and the fact that, it was mentioned last week by Talos that she's dead. So at the hands of Gravik. So, the fact that she's the first person to step forward to join, Nick's army, I think that's going to have a play in the future. Good stuff.
Definitely.
Excellent. Let's head on off to the bar.
Yes, we are off to Berner's Tavern for our pub quiz for episode 2 of Secret Invasion.
Absolutely. Second question, make sure you put it together with the first question. And if you get all 6 answers, put them together at the end of the season. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with all 6 correct answers. And you could be in with a chance of getting your hands on some Nick Fury Secret Invasion goodies. And the first part of that prize pack is a digital copy of all 5 issues of this year's Secret Invasion starring Nick Fury and Maria Hill. 5 comics. Digital copy will be sent to you immediately after we decide on the winner of the Nick Fury prize pack.
Excellent stuff. Yes.
Secret Invasion prize pack. I should stop calling it Nick Fury. It is a show with the characters.
Yes, it is.
John, do you want to give us the second question?
Certainly. Question 2 for episode 2. To what US city did Nick Fury and his mother take long journeys to as they played their game? Tell me something I don't know.
Very good. I don't know the answer to that one.
I do.
Off the top of my head. You've got it written down in front of you, though.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't have it written down in front of me. John, do you want to give the question one more time?
Certainly. To what US city did Nick Fury and his mother take long journeys to as they played their game? Tell me something I don't know.
Good stuff. Put that together with the other answers. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com by the end of the series, and you could be in with your chance of getting your hands on the Secret Invasion prize pack. Pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com and you'll get the other questions that we've asked for the rest of the season.
Excellent.
Yes, this episode of TV Podcast Industries is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon, including the one and only Sam Loynes. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thanks so much, Sam, for your support.
Yes, great stuff. Thanks, Sam, for your support.
Yes, you can be as cool as Sam and support us monthly for any amount over on patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries. Or if you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you can pop on over to buymeacoffee.com/tvpi and buy us a coffee. Or more, just buy donate an amount on a one-off piece that will buy Derek, who is editing to the wee hours of the morning, a coffee. Or just some form of beverage, potentially alcoholic, potentially non-alcoholic, potentially just water. Whatever is going to wet his whistle that particular night of editing. So we will appreciate it. Yes, you can go remember that is buymeacoffee.com/tvpi or patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries. Don't want to do either of those? Don't worry. You can also support us by subscribing to the podcast and sharing it with your friends, because sharing the podcast is what, gentlemen?
Sharing the love,
of course.
The Skrull love.
Yes.
The Skrull love, yes. Well, that's exactly what Nick Fury does. But let's not talk about that.
Exactly. But let us get into our feedback section from our fellow defenders and hear their thoughts. Our first email comes in from Coffee and Vodka, who says, "Greetings, fellow species bender defenders. It's been a while since we've seen Marvel on the small screen. Few better characters to start with than Nick Fury. This, even though the first episode has gone out of its way to say don't expect much from an unprepared old man who is facing an enemy that is Legion. Also, Ross has already been iced, and we're fridging Hill. Good luck. Not much to say about this dire scene-setting first episode, other than Fury had best get his groove back real quick. After the months-long dearth, I'll take anything, including dire. Welcome back, Kevin. Kevin, of course, from She-Hulk. 4 false furies, damn dirty bombs, and hills to die on out of 5. Peace and take care, coffee and vodka. P.S. Here's to hoping for an appearance of the Super Skrull.
Yes, we could be getting that later on in the series.
Yeah, great stuff, coffee and vodka. And nice to have you back with your thoughts, your dulcet thoughts on the Marvel episodes.
Yeah, I completely misread his note there, saying it was a dire scene-setting first episode, and then he gave it 4 out of 5, and I was going, oh, no, he means it's a dire situation for everybody.
Yes.
I get it. Okay. Good stuff.
Yes, thank you so much, Coffee and Vodka. We also have an email from Russell Hooper who had this to say. Hi, guys. Chris, many congratulations on your new son. Thank you very much, Russell. A question, if I may. His name is Miles. Any Star Trek influences in the name? No. I was more of the Spider kind of. I have Miles Morales, and then his initials are MJ. So therefore now he is kind of Spider-Man's girlfriend, wife. I just thought it was cool having all the initials and then the Miles Morales. But additionally, we did give him a middle name, which is Alexander, or just short for Lex, i.e. Lex Luthor. So I'm giving him both a hero and a villain. He can be whatever he wants to be. So he is both DC and Marvel, and we're going with all of it.
I love it, but if he does grow up to be an Irish engineer and working in space, you can say it was actually inspired by Miles O'Brien, the chief engineer of Deep Space Nine.
Oh, that's what they're going for. Oh,
There
yes,
you go.
yes, then yes. I'm going to say yes. He's Irish. The only problem is he's Miles with a Y instead of an I. So we can just say Miles O'Brien actually was with a Y, because he's Irish. He's a bit different.
There you go.
There you go.
Who also served on the Enterprise.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. Also D69 and everything else. He was also in The Commitments.
He was. He also
the actor
served on
was.
The Commitments.
Miles O'Brien was not in The Commitments. That would be
Well,
weird.
we don't know. There's a lot of timey-wimey strange
Yeah.
back and forth in space.
He was fixing the amps. He's like, I can't do it, Captain.
That's
I
Scotty.
know it is. But I can't remember
not
Miles
Irishy.
O'Brien's famous thing.
Thanks, Russell. This is going to be a weird one. Anyway, Russell went on to say, I looked at IMDb and they say Colby Smolder is in 5 episodes of this series. Not sure what to make of that, or even if IMDb is reliable, but there it is. I'm leaning in that she and Fury faked her death. As always, great show, guys. Keep it up, Russell. Thank you, Russell. And as you have heard from my thoughts at this at 0.5, I believe they have also faked her death. So yes, I am with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Russell. Maybe it's just her dead body. Maybe it's just flashbacks. There'll be flashbacks of her sort of lying on the ground, dead.
Well, the credits that she has on the show is special guest star, which just simply in credits means she gets paid more than someone that just came in for 1 episode. So if she appears in 5 credits, she'll get that pay for 5 credits. But don't trust IMDb. IMDb is editable by me. And by most people who have an account for IMDb, so it's not necessarily true as to whether I heard a great conversation, or I saw a great conversation the other day on Twitter between 2 people who work in payroll of big television companies who were basically saying, don't ever trust anything on there. I work in payroll. I know exactly how many episodes a season has because I have to pay people by the episode number. So if I'm telling you there's 5 episodes in a series, just because IMDb says 6, doesn't mean that IMDb is right. And the response from the other person on payroll said, I once amended credits to say that Daniel Radcliffe was in Glee just to see people freak out about it. So there you go. So don't trust IMDb. It's editable by anybody. But I think it's just the credits. It's a great way to keep it hidden that she dies in the first episode, isn't it, as well? So
that's true.
That's not saying she won't come back, but it's not necessarily to do with the credits on IMDb. So there you go.
Maria Hill to come back as a zombie.
Oh, in Marvel Zombies,
Yeah, exactly.
coming to your screen soon from Disney. That is in production, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
Good stuff. Thanks, Russell. Over on Facebook, Donald Dennis says, in all, it was a pretty good start, though I will miss Hill for the rest of the series. There were some things I think they meant to be clear, which are not. Those bombs were not the dirty bombs they were so afraid of, right? No, they're not, Donald. I think that was called out in the second episode here that was just a way to draw out Fury and Talos, to make sure that they came to the square to scare them into coming, I think. That's what that was. Donald followed up with another message saying, having listened to your episode on episode 1, we have different understandings of the exchanges between the Skrulls. Guy told the new refugee that the Skrulls who go out into the world maintain their human shape so that they will be harder to detect. While it may be true that staying in that shape also does some of the other things you were chatting about, it really felt like it was more about fitting into that human form more and being less likely to slip up when they were pretending to be someone, like practice makes perfect. Also, it's a bit easier on the budget. Can Skrulls shapeshift into looking like other Skrulls? I'm still not certain what the pods the humans are attached to are supposed to do. Do they restrain people and allow Skrulls to access their memory? Does it only form a connection when they're touching it, or is there a long-term connection that the Skrull can access when they aren't touching it? If the human is disconnected, will that have any effect? In what episode do you think we'll see Ross attached to one of those things? I like how they're being fairly economical with the effects. Warriors stay in human form and how they really hid Fury's transport with clever lighting when he came on screen. It feels like maybe they planned this all out. Good stuff, Donald.
Yeah, thanks, Donald. I like to think the idea is beyond just kind of it practice makes perfect. It allows them to do more than that. Like they can turn their blood from green to red because they've shifted for that long. But yeah, it could just be a practice makes perfect. But I do like the idea. It's greater because people are looking for Skrulls or have been looking for Skrulls for longer. So,
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Donald. Also on Facebook, Victor Von Doom says, greetings, Defenders. Let me start by saying I have been a fan of Nick Fury since he was Sergeant Fury of the Howling Commandos and Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Marvel Comics. I love the Cold War spy thriller premise wrapped in the MCU. Gravik reminds me of Carly from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Emilia Clarke let a bit of a Khaleesi peek out when Gaia learned of her mother's death. Looking forward to Fury getting his super agent mojo working. Excelsior, Victor Von Doom. Thank you so much, Victor. Yes, well, yourself and Derek shall have to do a sort of nerd off.
Fury off.
Yeah, Fury off. A furious Fury off over Nick Fury. Yeah. I must say, I've always loved Nick Fury because with Doctor Strange, then everything always pointed towards Strange Tales, and of course they were side by side in that comic as well. So, big fan of old Nick Fury. Plus, also there was a weird comic which I can't remember what it was called in the UK, which always then had his Howling Commandos in there. It was kind of before Marvel was really in the UK. And
I think we looked it up before. I think it was just called Marvel War Comics, and they had bits of stories from Sergeant Fury and Howling Commandos.
But it was in a completely different print. It was like in a British comic. I just can't remember what it was called. So yeah, it was good though. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Thanks, Victor. Brandy Elise Anderson says, fairly good start. I already prefer the MCU take on Secret Invasion as far as Skrulls are not a monolith. In the comics, Skrulls equals bad, and in Captain Marvel, Skrulls equals good, with the caveat their hands weren't completely clean, but I like this more realistic take, in which not only are there Skrulls that are on our side, as well as those who are against us, but to dive even deeper, they all want the same thing in the long run, but their means to go about achieving that goal are completely different. Not to mention that in this episode, they've had the same dynamic to a lesser extent within the humans in the spy game. You have Fury and Hill, who have Skrulls they consider friends and allies, and on the other side you have MI6 Lady, who appears to be more on the extreme point, in which you just eradicate all Skrulls and be done with it. Not only is this all more indicative of real life, it's just an all-around more interesting and complicated storyline. Side note, I wonder how Monica's after-credit scene from WandaVision will play out in all of this. I think seeing Monica will be more likely and impactful than seeing Carol Danvers.
Ooh, I like it, Brandy. Yeah, I think that's a really good call.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting one to see whether that actually pans out, though.
Yeah, good stuff, Brandy. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see Monica back on Disney TV, wouldn't it?
For sure.
Be quite a cool choice. I know obviously they're all filming together for the Marvels during this time, so it could be quite easy to get all three of them in there for a little moment, all the Marvels together on the TV.
Absolutely. And I think that more complicated story makes all the motivations much more complicated for figuring out, or at least with all the different intrigue and possibilities, because there's complicated motives coming in on it. Effectively, the Skrull we see here in episode 2, she's married to Nick Fury. Her motivations very different compared to another Skrull who's not married to a human, for example. But could be pro-human. So, it's really good, and it makes it a little more tricky to navigate in terms of certainty, I think, for sure. So, good stuff. Thanks, Brandy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brandy. We also got some feedback from Dr. Bob Phillips, who had this to say: they can't have killed off Hill, not after an entire Legends clip show about her. Very much enjoying the Cold War double and triple dealing twists and turns. Samuel L. Jackson doing an awesome job as the director. Olivia Colman, the perfect ditzy English spy controller. And I'm still impressed that the Skrulls have such a command of accents. Do they speak Skrullian with regional variations? Oh my god, that's going to be cool. Thank you, Dr. Bob, because that's all I'm going to think about now. Like the different elements and variations of Skrullian. It's like, sorry, I didn't catch. It's like if you heard someone from Cork, you're like, sorry, what now?
Well, basically, if you hear the 4 variations of Irish that we have in Ireland, this tiny country, I can totally see that Skrullian could be spoken really differently. But interestingly, in the second episode, we actually have an explanation for why a lot of them speak with British accents, right? Because Brixton was the base that was chosen. Yeah. Brixton in the UK was the base that was chosen in 97. So a lot of English actors here taking on these roles, and now it all makes sense, right? So like that. Good stuff. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob.
With that, we will say goodbye to Chris, because duty's call. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. We will have you back, obviously, hopefully, for the third episode of Secret Invasion.
Yes. Thank you so much to everyone continuing listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the podcast, share it with your friends. It's the only way that Miles is going to grow up to all the MCU stuff in the future is if you subscribe to this podcast.
Excellent.
And share it and tell people about it, because then they have to go watch the show if they're going to listen about it. And it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's how this works. So remember, people. Thank you very much, and please like, subscribe, and share.
I love it, Chris. We are going to continue on with the feedback, but thanks so much, Chris. We'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, see you, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.
Great stuff. To continue on with the feedback on episode 1, Kelly Burgess says, it blew my mind. 2 of my favourite characters gone in the first episode. I'm really hoping that Ross isn't dead, that maybe he's being held captive, and hated that Hill thought it was Fury in her last moments. This show has me really excited for Marvel once again, hoping it keeps getting better.
Excellent stuff, Kelly. Yes, characters could be falling thick and fast in this show. Hopefully most of them will now change to a Skrull, but who knows? Or is it just a grand plan of one Nicholas Fury?
Yeah,
who knows? Good stuff. Thanks, Kelly. Also, Ray from Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, says, just managed to watch it now. Really enjoyed it. It was measured, and I enjoyed the pacing. The 2 main reveals was Emily Clark revealed as Talos's daughter, and the totally shocking ending. No. Gravak has been well established, all just in this one episode. So looking forward to the coming episodes. Not being able to trust anyone is a great premise, and the show immediately has created that paranoia that was so well done in the comics. Thanks so much, Ray. Great to hear from you. Absolutely. Shocking ending for episode 1. Shocking, I guess, maybe for some, ending for episode 2.
Yeah.
And yes, lots of twists and turns here for those to keep you concentrating through the 6-episode series. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ray. Chris Harrelson says, watched the show last night and listened to your podcast today. You guys always help me think of things that I didn't catch on first viewing. And he has a question for us. So when you get a screener copy of a show to view it ahead of the air date, is it still a physical disc they send you, or do you have some kind of code that you use to watch it digitally?
It most certainly is a code and you watch it online.
Yeah, it's a site. It's specifically a site. The reason why I wanted to mention it is just because of the reason we didn't record last week, didn't record our episode 2 last week, and why we may miss a couple of things if we record in advance. So it is digitally streamed. We only can watch it a few times before it airs. What we do when we're writing our notes for an episode is we normally rewind back and forth and catch things on subtitles and that kind of thing. And it's not as easy to do on the screeners. While we absolutely appreciate them and it's great to see them in advance and it gives us time to prepare to record podcasts, they're awesome, to be honest, to get a couple of episodes in advance. It is much nicer being able to watch it after other people have seen it and catch things that you may not have caught on first viewing or second viewing. So
that's it. And increasingly, like Derek said, it's normally you only have so many views of them, or they put a really, as was the case here, quite a short window on it.
Yeah.
In terms of when they're live for that preview screener watch.
Yeah, we had 26 hours and 16 of those hours we were all working. So so it made it really difficult to catch that. And of course, we have to sleep as well during that time too. So, but a good question, Chris. Thanks very much. Hope that helps you out. We pop on to episode 2 feedback on the second episode, John.
Yes.
First up on email, Coffee and Vodka says, greetings fellow Fury following Defenders. It's too bad they didn't release episodes 1 and 2 together to the general public. Paired with one another, they provide a much more immersive experience, moving from global imperative to personal stakes. And it doesn't get much more personal than a Mrs. Fury who finds it easy being green. The separation of Talos and Nick came as a bit of a surprise, but not as much as Fury's anger. What did he expect after not finding them a home world and a years-long disappearance? After Gravik's speech to the council, I must admit I'm kind of on his side, especially after his words about dogs versus humans. The second separation of Fury and Rhodey came as a complete surprise as well, and seemingly points to Rhodey being a Skrull, trying to take Fury off the board early. Either that, or it's the biggest green herring of the series. Kobe Smulders, according to IMDb, is in all 6 episodes. Does an unseen body in a casket count? Olivia Colman, for the second time in as many episodes, stole the show. Bit of a slow start, but still very intriguing. Looking forward to episode 3. 4 green thumbs, disarming mojos, and Frau Furies out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka. Great stuff, Coffee and Vodka.
Yeah, good stuff there from Coffee and Vodka. Yeah, interesting. Does Kobe Smulders count when she's in a casket with an unseen body? Possibly. I really don't know. Yeah. Some of these contracts could be quite strange, I guess. Or whether it's to do with the recap. You know, yeah. we see that. Again, is it about flashbacks that might happen, or is she still alive and is going to pop up as a zombie to connect everything into Marvel Zombies? Everything's connected, or just simply be some kind of overarching part of a master plan. You know, never can quite tell. Agree, Olivia Colman, really, really good. There is just a feeling of ease with how she puts across Sonia Falsworth, and I guess, you know, a little bit, a little is a lot with her, and I think that's really a good use of her for sure. And yeah, I would agree. I think the Fury and Talos did come as a shock, but I guess it is quite a large bombshell. In fact, 1 million Skrulls worth of a bombshell. And given everything going on, then maybe it's just exasperation, and he might actually be 3 steps behind rather than 3 steps ahead. So it's difficult to know. A really good intrigue just across the board, for sure. Yeah,
I do also agree with you on Gravik's comments about humans versus dogs. The way he describes it as dogs don't destroy their own habitat. The way he describes it from that external view that the Skrulls have does make it very convincing argument. Great stuff, Coffee Vodka. Thanks so much for your email.
Yeah, thanks again. Back over to Facebook, where Heather Wallace says, one of the things I love about the MCU is how characters are friends and allies. The emotional connections feel very authentic. I enjoy seeing them develop from a place of respect, particularly between characters who have been on opposite sides. Fury and Talos are one of those friendships. I really liked the genuine affection between them last week. So to have Fury throw Talos out this week was upsetting. I'm hoping that it is happening early in the series, which will mean they are reunited by the end, as long as one doesn't have to sacrifice themselves for the other. The whole series has given me serious 80s flashbacks from the Cold War paranoia to Ben Mendelsohn. I watched one of his first TV shows back in 1985. It's called The Henderson Kids, if you're interested. His girlfriend was played by an equally unknown young performer called Kylie Minogue. Interesting stuff. Yes. Thank you for the offer of Henderson Kids. I'm not too sure whether I will take it up, though. But I would like to see... I don't know where we find it. Yeah. Well, that's true. That's the other side. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see some of Ben Mendelsohn's early work for sure, because... You know, for me, he zoomed out of nowhere, in a sense, with Rogue One, as Director Krennic. Even though being in The Dark Knight Rises, it was just that association, but it was a much smaller part that he played in that. And then obviously getting the role in Miss Marvel. So, he didn't come from nowhere. That's the point.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's some really good back catalogue of his work there. So yeah, might see it, might not. I prefer Kylie's music maybe to her acting.
Although you did watch about 6 years of her on Neighbours though, John, didn't you?
I did, but that was Neighbours.
That was Neighbours, yeah. It wasn't the acting either.
And then Home and Away.
Yeah.
Because they were on a beach.
Yes. Yeah. And that was her sister Danny, wasn't it? Was on that.
Oh, I don't remember entirely. I remember Chris Hemsworth.
Going way too far back into the 80s for reminiscing. But thanks so much for your thoughts there, Heather. Donald Dennis says, I like this episode, but man, were there some awkward cuts. The problem is, I can't tell how much of this is due to the nature of what is being obscured by the spy thriller nature of it, and how much is questionable directing. The flashback was particularly rough, with very on-the-nose dialogue, but that could be a, here is how Fury remembers it, not how it really was type scene. The bar scene also felt a bit performative, and it was almost like they reshot a lot of that scene where the actors weren't in the same room, but maybe that was an artifact of multiple takes, or perhaps the characters were communicating in a way that the casual observer isn't supposed to notice. Like later in the series, we'll eventually see the scene with more context and additional footage. Also, about 47 minutes in, when the door got blown off the interrogation room, it didn't seem to be the door that our interrogator barricaded. I saw no indication of the barricade we were shown the interrogator placing across the door. Are we going to find out that the entire scene is a double bluff? Like the person they rescued was a different Skrull, and maybe when they were going to be executed, that was the one who came back instead of the one who killed them. Can Skrulls regrow fingers? I can't tell if this is a flawless masterpiece or if it is unraveling at the seams. Either way, I'm engaged. Interesting stuff, Donald. I have to say, I actually did notice that when they blew off the hinges of the door, that it fell forward the exact way that you would open it. And the whole thing that Falsworth did was put a bar across the inside of the door so you couldn't pull it open. So how would explosives blow the door open? So it did seem a bit weird. It's an interesting one to catch. As for the scene between Rhodey and Fury in the restaurant, I was too gripped by what was going on. I must say I didn't notice anything wrong with the cuts or editing in that scene.
Yeah, no, I really liked it. I thought, maybe it's done in that way because ultimately Rhodey did have at least one of his security guards in the room. So, that kind of conversation might not be as open and as expressive as it should have been. As to your point of maybe we'll see that again with certain additional context and so on, to see that they were actually bouncing off one another with, I guess, the unspoken words, with eyes or whatever. So,
Rhodey's taking every fourth word that Fury's saying to him and forming the full sentence.
Yeah,
but, or something like that.
Yeah, thanks, as always, for your comments, Donald. Dan Lee says, enjoyed that much more than episode 1. I assume they are cooking up a super Skrull using the harvested parts displayed on the computer screen. Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Seems like that, Dan, yeah.
Let us hope that is the case, Dan. Thanks very much. Also, Victor Von Doom says, greetings, Defenders. OMG, Tom Clancy and John le Carre must be rolling or applauding in their graves. This is my kind of spy thriller. The antagonists are firmly established and there's plenty of action and suspense. Sam Jackson, Olivia Colman and cast are killing it. Kingsley Ben-Adir as Gravix is also very scary as he rarely raises his voice or shows any emotion. Can't figure if Rhodey is a Skrull. His carpet bomb joke with Fury was amusing. Will Fury and Talos's partnership survive their falling out? I wonder if any other entities will enter the fray. Carol Danvers should show her face since she made the promise along with Fury. I like Fury's Federer. Reminds me of Raymond Reddington. Is Fury married to a Skrull or is the wife an impersonator? The Otis Redding song was a nice touch. It sounded as if it was mixed with the Commitments version.
Very good.
Looking forward to TVPI podcast and Defenders feedback. Excelsior, Victor Von Doom. Really pleased you're loving Secret Invasion, Victor. Certainly, yeah, it's such a great sort of show. And certainly if you're into spy thrillers, such as myself, as is yourself, as is Derek, everyone loves a good bit of double crossing here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting on our Who Can We Trust? Is Rhodey a Skrull? I don't actually know whether I answered that when I think about it. Certainly Derek thinks not.
Yeah.
Chris does.
Yeah.
I'm undecided.
Very good.
But if
Very
I'm
good.
pushed, I'd probably think he's a Skrull at this case. Like you say, take him off the table. And we certainly know that members of the Republican Party are Skrull from the council. Although
we know the president isn't yet.
Yes. And one of the interesting takes that I heard recently around the opening credits above the and away from the AI stuff is that when you see Moscow and you see London, the cathedral in Moscow, Red Square, and like Big Ben, they're all green. Whereas in the part with the White House, that is still pristine white.
That's right.
And it's green clouds above it, kind of the impending danger. But ultimately, the purity of the White House is still intact. And that may extend beyond the president to include his personal staff, like Rhodes. So I don't know, maybe he's not a Skrull, but I think he is at the moment, I have to say.
Yeah. We'll see more as the season goes on. I will also say I agree with you, Victor. Carol Danvers needs to get back here and show her face. She made the promise alongside Fury. And not only that, while Fury was snapped away for 5 years, Carol Danvers was still around and working with the other Avengers. Remember when she was talking to Black Widow, who was on Earth and stuff? So she should have been dealing out something there for the Skrulls while Fury was gone. Because she would have thought he was dead as well, right?
Yeah, she has to take some responsibility.
Absolutely. Brilliant stuff. Thanks, Victor. Dr. Bob says, so Hill is definitely dead-ish. Maybe, or maybe not. The more it's being emphasized, the less I'm believing it. I hope they show us a polka dot frog when Hill's mentioned next. Nice one. I did love the story and game on the train as a method of exposition, plus a stark reminder that apartheid America was within a lifetime. Olivia Colman, the torturer, indeed, the whole of the butcher shop scene was gory and impressive. Gravik must surely be the first Welsh alien revolutionary to make war on the planet. Great stuff, Dr. Bob. I love Gravik's accent. I was trying to catch it when he was talking. I was going, I think the first words he says, I was going, is that a Manchester accent that I'm hearing? Where's that from? No, it's Cardiff, which is in Wales.
Yes, and it kind of certainly around North Wales, which Cardiff ain't, but Liverpudlian, I think, like soft Liverpudlian,
right,
can sort of merge a bit into Welsh.
Very good, very good.
Tonally at least, yes, but. Yes, certainly Welsh alien revolutionaries. I think he's probably the first. Yeah, for sure. Great stuff. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Great stuff, Dr. Bob. And finally on this episode, Brandy Elise Anderson has a theory. She says, I wonder if Gravik went and lived with Fury and his wife back in 1997, and that's why Gravik has taken Fury's actions, or lack thereof, so hard, because Fury's wife is the Skrull who introduced Gravik to Fury in the meeting.
Interesting.
Very good, Brandy. I think that was Chris's theory earlier on as well, wasn't it? So similar theory to that Gravik went and maybe lived with Fury and his wife. So, but it could have been all the way back then in 1997, and Fury maybe got together with his wife before that.
Yeah.
I guess, given the cliffhanger at the end of this episode, we'll probably find out much more about their relationship at the start of episode 3.
Yes, good stuff. Good theory. Thanks, Brandy. But thank you so much, fellow defenders, for all your feedback. It is great to get your thoughts on episode 1 and, of course, this episode 2. Keep your thoughts, comments, theories, questions coming in for the remaining episodes of Secret Invasion. It's certainly a show that lends itself to huge amounts of discussion, given all the possibilities coming from this spy thriller.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you so much, fellow defenders.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe to the podcast over at tvpodcastindustries.com. And if you do go over there to the website, again, you can find all the questions to our Secret Invasion pub quiz. And if you do subscribe to the podcast, you will also be getting our coverage of The Witcher Season 3. The first 5 episodes of that dropped on the 29th of June. Now, because it's a Netflix series and all 5 episodes dropped at the same time, we don't have a schedule for when we're releasing it, but we are hoping to record our coverage of the first episode of The Witcher Season 3 this week, ahead of episode 3 of Secret Invasion, but we've just got to plan it out, make sure we all have availability to do that. So it will be coming soon. You can get your thoughts in on The Witcher to feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com, or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. There's a spoiler post up there for all 5 episodes. So whatever way you watch it, if you want to share your thoughts with us as you go, you're more than welcome to. We'd love to hear them.
Yes. But we will be back with episode 3 of Secret Invasion next week. But in the meantime, keep watching, keep listening, and keep scrolling. Be careful who you trust.
Bye.